We are here today to recognize and to also interview one of our American heroes. I'm sure he knows that already, but Mr. Abraham Bolden has gone through so much. I didn't learn about him until maybe about a few weeks ago when Johnny Akoff brought him to my attention. And so I wanted to find out something about him, his background. So I found myself reading a lot of articles about him. I watched a lot of videos. And when I came away from that, the first thing came to my mind, and I've heard it from so many other people, this man went through hell. I don't know how he could have gone through it. He's a survivalist. You know, most people couldn't go through what Mr. Bolden has gone through. I decided to make my title In Search of Justice, the sad saga of Secret Service agent Abraham Bolden. Abraham Bolden has been talking about his dismal plight now for a very long time, how he was railroaded by the U.S. Secret Service and other law enforcement agencies, officials, while he was a Secret Service agent. He's been fighting a long time to clear his name after spending 3 years and 3 months in federal prison for a crime he emphatically says that he never committed. He was fired from the Secret Service in August 1964, and he spent time in federal prison and was paroled in 1969. He is deeply rooted in history. He is an American hero, a black man that won't give up his fight to clear his name. He grew up, he said, believing in the justice of God. And that was one thing that caught my attention, because I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe in God myself. It's been a long haul for Bolden, the East St. Louis native who was the first black Secret Service agent. He became a Secret Service agent in 1960. He has a long history of fighting a battle he never imagined and feels betrayed by his government. Not only did he face racism from his fellow agents while on the job, but he has spent most of his life fighting to clear his name. It has been one hell of a ride for Bolden, a patriotic and courageous man, in his quest to seek justice and clear his name. He has spent most of his life toward that goal. 53 years to be exact. Did you realize it was 53 years? All to no avail. Bolden is aware that it's been a slow road to attaining the dream of clearing his name. He was denied pardons by 3 U.S. presidents, yet he has no intentions of ever giving up in fighting to clear his name. Even after 3 heart attacks, a pacemaker, and a bout with cancer, Bolden still has a whimper of hope in clearing his name, which has evaded him so many years. Bolden is a historical figure, the first black Secret Service agent on a presidential detail. President John F. Kennedy, while on a visit to Chicago in 1961, personally invited him to be a part of his presidential detail. He was elated, but from the start of his job, he faced blatant racism from fellow agents and eventually did time for bribery, which he denies, and has spent most of his life fighting a grave injustice done to him. Prior to joining Kennedy's presidential detail, Bolden served as a former state trooper and a Secret Service agent in Chicago. He graduated cum laude from Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, with a BA degree in music composition. And I was telling him that we had something in common, because when I went away to college at Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama, my major was music. Of course, I was on the other side. I wanted to be a professional singer. President Kennedy told Bolden he was the Jackie Robinson of baseball.
That's right.
Some have said he was framed because he knew too much. Maybe you shouldn't have known too much. In published reports, it was stated that after 2 incredibly unfair criminal trials, the first in which the sitting judge instructed the jury to take into consideration the judge's opinion that Bolden was guilty of all counts in the indictment. Well, I mean, come on, he gave his opinion, and I felt that that opinion should not have been a part of what he told the jury. Bolden was convicted. However, the case against Bolden began to fall apart when one of the witnesses, Joseph Spagnoli, testified against Bolden, confessed that he and another witness, Frank William Jones, concocted and fabricated the criminal case against Bolden with the help of an assistant United States attorney. Mm-hmm. In spite of Spagnola's confession and the government refusal to deny the charges levied by Spagnola, Bolden was sent away to the penitentiary. Mm-hmm. After an initial mistrial, Bolden was convicted and served 3 years and 3 months in federal prison before he was paroled in 1969. But in his first trial, it was a hung jury. There was a black woman on the jury, and she said she would never vote to convict him. So then he had to have a second trial. After the initial mistrial, when he was convicted and served the 3 years, Bolden was arraigned in Chicago on May 20th, 1964, on federal charges that he had solicited a bribe from a counterfeiting ring that he had helped break. And in spite of that, he was accused of seeking $50,000 in exchange for a secret file, which he said never happened. The government's case rested primarily on the testimony of 2 men, Frank Jones and Joseph Spagnoli, both facing criminal charges themselves. Bolden was not accused of receiving, or was he ever found to be in possession of, any illicit funds from the accused felons who testified against him. He maintained his innocence, asserting that he had been framed because he planned to expose dereliction among the agents assigned to guard Kennedy in front of the commission. The Secret Service denied Bolden's claim. Now, somewhere around down the road, these guys that were the ones that were the reason for him going to prison said that they had been asked to concoct those lies against Bolden. But yet and still, when Bolden made an appeal of that, he wasn't given another trial. You know, how unfair can that be? You know, if these people said under oath that they had been told to concoct this against him. So now that we've done the introduction, we're going to let you talk for a while. Most of the video interviews I saw, they let you do all of the talking without asking any other questions. And I just felt that there were so many questions that should have been asked that were not asked.
Yes.
So we're going to give you that opportunity to talk about when you first joined the Secret Service. You joined the Secret Service in 1960.
Yes,
and you
right.
were a Secret, I told you I looked up the information.
Yes,
you were a Secret Service agent in 1961 when President John Kennedy came to Chicago to visit. And lo and behold, you were protecting and watching the restroom.
Yes, that's right.
And John Kennedy, when he came in, had to go to the restroom.
That's right.
And so he came by you because you were
right.
at the door, and he asked you, were you a Secret Service agent or were you one of Daley's Chicago finest?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you talked to him and he asked you what would it be like. They didn't have a black in the presidential to protect the president. And he asked you, how would you like that? And you said, yeah, you were very elated.
That's
and
right.
I mean, anyone would be elated to get that offer from the president himself, and you would be protecting him. Okay, you can take it from there.
Over the many years that this has happened, of course I wondered why. I wondered why this had to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that things happen in my life like a hand that fits a glove, like it was always meant to be. Now, when I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, praise be to God, I was a very sensitive and empathetic young kid. The conditions that my people were living under concerned me. When I would see fights in the neighborhood, or I would hear stabbings, or when I would hear a racial strife, it concerned me. Many nights I went to bed and tears would come down my eyes. And I wanted to find out what was the problem. Where was the answer? I wanted to know the whys. I knew the what, and I knew how the chaos was being propagated, but I didn't know why. And I always felt that the why of the major answer was in God's hands, that He is the source of all whys of the world. So I grew up wanting to really be a minister. I wanted to do something to help my people, or help them rise above the conditions that I saw in East St. Louis, Illinois. Now, during the time that I was growing up, there was no difference between East St. Louis, Illinois, and the deepest part of Mississippi. We had separate washrooms. There was a black drinking fountain and a white drinking fountain. There were in the theaters, we had to sit in the balcony. And when we were downtown, if there was a white person coming towards you on the sidewalk, we had to step off. This is the way we were trained, and let them go by. We were taught to say yes, sir, and no, sir, not only to the European, but also to our parents. It was just a matter of respect. It wasn't a matter of being Uncle Tom or any of those words like that. It was just a matter of giving everyone the respect. So I started out reading the Bible. And I would read the Bible every day before I went to school. I was going to grade school then. My mother would help me pronounce some of the words. And unfortunately, she's gone on and I'm still mispronouncing many of those words. I can't get 79 together, and there's a lot of names in there that I can't pronounce. But to get to the bottom of what it is really saying, one had to go beyond what one believed or what one had faith in. There had to be some substantial knowledge plus spiritual proof. And then that brings you into what they call gnosis, which is knowledge of God. And that's what I sought after. And in these 82 years that I've been on earth, I can happily conclude that everything that happened in my life makes sense. Because I had dedicated in my heart and consecrated my heart to God to find out the truth, to know His will, to become a floor mat in His house. And in order to do that, it was necessary for me to become aware of suffering. Suffering being the greatest teacher in the world. When you suffer, you learn by the things that you suffer. So I graduated from Lincoln High School at the top of my class. As a matter of fact, I wrote the baccalaureate song that we sung at the baccalaureate event that they always have before the graduation. I wrote the song. I got a scholarship and went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri. Still having within my heart to find a solution to the problem of our people. And I say our people because it seemed like other people had already found the solution to their problem, and that we were the ones seeking righteousness and the solution to our problem. So after I graduated from Lincoln University with a BA in music composition, my very, very beautiful and loyal wife, Barbara Hardy Bolden, and I were married in my last year of college. And she played a major role in making me what I am today. She has gone on now to be with God, but she was the strong pillar of my life. Had it not been for my wife, who gave me 3 wonderful children who are alive today and who were very successful, I don't think I could have made it, because many times God spoke through her to me. Now let me go on and just tell you how I happened to go in the Secret Service. My wife was sitting there reading a newspaper, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And she said, Abraham, she says, I know you got a teaching job waiting in Haytime, Missouri. I had been given a music scholarship and a teaching job to Haytime, Missouri. She said, but you've always talked about being in law enforcement. She says, Pinkerton National Detective Agency is hiring detectives. And I told my wife, I said, Pinkerton is not going to hire any Negroes. They don't have any Negroes in Pinkerton National Detective Agency. So they have uniformed guards who stand around, you know, and pull a chain on the clock and things like that, but not a detective. She says, well, you never know. Go there and find out. Go see. So she cut the little advertisement, help wanted ad out of the paper. And Monday morning, I went over there with the little advertisement in my lapel pocket. And I walked into the office at 705 North Olive Street on the 12th floor in St. Louis, Missouri. And this was in 1956. So I walked into the Pinkerton office and I told a young lady who was sitting there typing, the secretary, I said, I came to apply for a job as a Pinkerton National Detective Agent. She says, we don't have an opening. I said, yes, you do, and thanks be to God, my wife had given me the paper. I took it and laid it on the desk. She says, well, we're not hiring people like you. And it just so happened that the district manager of Pinkerton National Detective Agency was making a survey of the offices in his district, which included Detroit, St. Louis, Indiana. He was making his rounds, so to speak, and inspecting. And he overheard the conversation. And he came out of the office where he had been talking to Mr. Morlock, who was the deputy district director. And as the secretary said, what's the problem? She says, well, he came and he's looking for a job and we don't have anything open. He says, yes, we do. Says, give him an application, have him fill it out, and bring it directly to me. So she didn't want to do it. She was pouting, you know, she turned about red as a beet. But he didn't have it any other way. She gave me application, I filled it out, went in to see the director. Mr. Mertz told me, he says, Mr. Bolden, he says, you're going to be the first detective that Pinkerton has hired, the first Negro. He says, I want you to do a good job. We're going to send you to school. We're going to teach you about investigation. And you won't be known as a Pinkerton agent because we're a secret organization and we go under the name of Allen Insurance Company. I recall that. So I had Allen Insurance Company identification, but I had a Pinkerton National Detective Agent commission book, which I never carried because they didn't want to be identified as Pinkerton agent. So I did such things as investigate insurance fraud, thefts, inside thefts from restaurants, hotels, going undercover and revealing certain things to stop the thefts that were going on. It was a very interesting job. And I liked it. So, but after a year, I had worked at Pinkerton. My wife was reading that same Post-Dispatch again. And this was a year later. She said, Abraham, she said, the state police have an ad in the paper that they're looking for state patrolmen. I said, well, I'm doing okay at Pinkerton. She said, no, you're not. she said, we got a baby coming and Pinkerton's not going to cut it. So I said, all right, I'll go to Springfield and I'll take the test to become an Illinois State Trooper. So that's what I did. And in 1957, I became an Illinois State Policeman and was stationed in Peoria, Illinois. As a matter of fact, I was the first African American or black Negro stationed in Peoria, Illinois. And they had a lot of fun with that around there. Peoria, Illinois was a little small town then of some 85,000 people or so. And it was a hick, what we used to call a hick town. When I would drive up and down the highway, the young European men would holler out, hey, Smokey, you know, things like that. Well, that didn't bother me so much because I have to be frank with you, in that big hat with the wide brim, I did kind of look like Smokey. So I couldn't get angry with anybody about that. But I did run into a couple of very racist people, you know, on the highway. You stop a man, he's from Alabama, Georgia. I had one driver to tell me, you're not a state policeman because black people can't be state policemen. I said, I showed him my badge at 1191. I said, sir, I'm an Illinois State Policeman. I would like to see your driver's license. He said, I don't give my driver's license to no niggers. I said, sir, you're going to give me your driver's license, or they're going to have your funeral next week. Now, that's up to you. So he surrendered his driver's license. I was very polite. Now, we had a young senator, a very dashing man, was running for president, and his name was John F. Kennedy. I was the Illinois State Policeman. He came through Peoria, Illinois, during one of his stops. He gave a speech at the courthouse on Main Street in Peoria, Illinois. And I attended and listened to him, even though I was not on duty at the time. But I was on duty when his plane landed, and he had to cut past my intersection that I was going. I had to stop all of the traffic. And he waved at me, and I waved at him. He was sitting on the back of a white Lincoln automobile. Never in all my life did I think that I would get any closer to that young, dashing Bostonian, and I never thought that I would meet him. But we waved. He couldn't help but see me because I'm standing out there, and at that time I'm about 5'11". I'm somewhere around 225 pounds. I know he saw me, but everything was up here then. But now, you know, that was before the stock market crashed. So the men in here, the older men, know what I'm talking about. So I happened to talk to one of the agents who visited Peoria in reference to the visit about Senator Kennedy. And I asked him, I said, do they have any Negroes in the Secret Service? And Special Agent in Charge Fred Baxter, who was over the Springfield office, that's who I was talking to, he says, no, I don't think we do. Well, why don't you put in the application and we'll see how far it can go. So, all right. He said, you come to Springfield, I give you the test, the application, we'll see what happens. So in 1906, I took the test, and on October 30 of 1960, I became a Secret Service agent, stationed in Chicago, Illinois. Now here's where things get plenty good, and this is where God began to show his hand. When I came to Chicago, I ran into some racism that would make East St. Louis look like the most liberal town in the world. Chicago in the 60s, it was a backbiting type of racism. It was not overt, but it was a backstabbing. You look around and you've been cut. It was a type that was so secretive and organized, they had cliques to make sure that you don't progress. That's what I found in the early 60s. So now the president is scheduled to come to Chicago on April 28th of 1961 after he had won the election in Cook County by some 8,000 votes. Now, I understand, I don't know how true it is, but out of the 8,000 votes, they tell me 7,999 names were on a tombstone out there in one of the graveyards. But Kennedy won. He won by 8,000 votes. I think I was number 8,000. And I was alive. So now they got this big convention going on at this dinner going on at McCormick Place, and the Secret Service, they call us all in and give us stations where the Chicago unit is going to be stationed in protecting the president. See, the president travels with a detail. He travels with a detail of about 30 agents at that time. But whenever he would go to a different city other than Washington, D.C., the agents in that city would also have to protect the president along with some Chicago policemen. Well, the Chicago policemen normally are used for crowd control. They are put at different places where a uniform is very noticeable. When they give a direction, they can see right away the authority that the policeman is standing there in his uniform, and there's no question about his authority. So they had a Chicago policeman stationed in front of the washroom at McCormick Place. And I was to be near the door where President Kennedy was to make his entrance into McCormick Place. At the meeting prior to the president's arrival, they switched the two of us. They put the Chicago policeman in the doorway, the European, and they put me in the basement in front of the washroom. Well, I could sense what was going on, you know. I might have looked a little bit off, but I was a long way from crazy. I knew what had happened. And I had been raised up, you know, to notice things like that. So now at 8:30, I hear the band striking up, and I hear car doors slamming, and I'm trying to rubberneck, looking up those couple of flights of steps, trying to get a look at the president. And I said, oh, I wish I could just be, if I had been in the place where I was, he couldn't have helped but seen. And I was just just so disheartened that they had put me down there. Then I look up and here comes President Kennedy down the steps. And he's followed by Mayor Richard Daley, Dunn, the senator who was from Illinois at that time, and Dawson, William Dawson, Bill Dawson, followed by all of the big wheels in Illinois. And the president comes down and he stops right in front of me and he smiles. Like I said, I was weighing about 220 then. I thought I was blocking his way because he stopped. And he looked right in front of me. And he said, "Are you a Secret Service agent? Or are you one of Mayor Daley's finest?" So I'm a Secret Service agent, Mr. President. I was shocked. I was really shocked. And one of the agents, Dick Jordan, who was with the presidential detail, he said his name is Abraham Bolden. President Kennedy said, "Mr. Bolden, has there ever been a Negro on the White House detail?" I said, "Not to my knowledge, Mr. President." He said, "Would you like to be the first?" I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. President." He said, "I'll be looking forward to seeing you in Washington, D.C." And I just thought that was a miracle. You see how God works? See, man was trying to hide me. But God said, "I want him seen." So he put me right there where the president could not miss me. Wow. You see how that works? All right, now, when I went to Washington, D.C. on June the 6th of 1961, I got a call from Special Agent in Charge, Stu Stout. He said, "You got to come to work tonight." I said, "Tonight?" I said, "I just got in. I just got off of the plane." He says, "Yeah, but you're on the 12 to 8 shift." So, okay, I'll be right over. Didn't have time to shower or anything like that, you know, but so I might be bringing somebody with me, but I'm coming. so I went over. I walked, as a matter of fact. I was living at 7 Logan Circle Northwest in Washington, D.C. And I walked over there, which was about a mile and a half. And I walked at a good pace back then. And when I got there, the guard looked at me and he reached up and he got a picture. All this was all set up. He looked at the picture and he looked at me, looked at the picture and looked at me. And as I turned and make that long walk up that walkway to the 2 doors of the White House, the guard said, "Good luck, Mr. Bolden." And I walked step by step, feeling so proud. I walked into history. And I thank God for that time. But now if the story ended there, everything would be just happy and hunky-dory, wouldn't it? But it didn't end there. I found when I went to Washington, D.C., we were in the midst of a civil rights movement. And I mean, that was chaos all over the United States. Brothers and sisters, blacks were being lynched down in Mississippi. I mean, it was somewhat like today, but maybe a little worse. We had a lot of leaders back then. We had Al Raby here in Chicago, and Dr. Martin Luther King was just coming around then. And we had several other known leaders that were in Chicago trying to solve this racial thing. But it flared up. I know in my neighborhood where I was living, we had a big riot down there at 59th and Marvin because blacks were integrating into that section of the city. See, when I came to Chicago, there were no black people living across Ashland Avenue. When I came to Chicago, Ashland Avenue was about it. Where Halstead had been the dividing line, my family and I, we started integrating just west of Halstead, but Ashland was still a dividing line. But anyway, I'm just bringing you up on a little history. We had the bus rides were going on then, and these these Southerners were throwing fire bombs. They were burning schools, blowing up churches. It was just going crazy. And here I was, walking into history in the White House. Now, when I got there, I found that some of the agents who were protecting the president, especially the ones that were from the South, they hated the president. They hated him because the president had come out forthright and made his position known that as long as he was president, he wanted everyone to be treated equally. He didn't want to give anybody a head start, but he wanted a level playing field, and that's what impressed me about it. See, he organized events and made appointments to his cabinet that held the upgrowing, the coming forth of the Negro. They were put in jobs that they had never been able to hold. We had Andrew Hatcher, who became the first African-American press secretary, deputy press secretary. We also had a woman who became President Kennedy's doctor. But this stern racism that surrounded Kennedy among his bodyguards, I heard agents say he should be killed. Now these are his protectors. These are the people who are protecting him. Somebody should blow his brains out. And that eventually happened. They left pictures of me. It would draw black men with huge black lips and things like that, and put them where they know I would see them. You know, little beady hairs and all this kind of stuff, and crying and things. I put that in my book. It's in my book how they did me. But what really pushed my button is when we went to Hyannisport, Massachusetts. And here was this beautiful black wax. She was in the Women's Air Corps. And she was dressed in a uniform, just looked so beautiful. And the president's plane had just landed, and I was in a Secret Service car going on my way to a Hyannisport compound with 8 other agents. One of the agents looked out of the car window and says, "There goes a nigger." And I had to control myself, because that testosterone that I don't have anymore of, I mean, it just, I was ready, and I had a .357 Magnum on my side. Could have blown his brains out, but I think maybe I made the best decision. I just made a note of it in my mind. So when we got to the compound, I noticed that the agents had these bottles of whiskey in the little satchels that they were carrying. And they were taking drinks on duty. And I just couldn't believe it. And the more they drank, the more they talked. You know, the more they talk, it really came out then. Would you want your daughter to marry a nigger? You know, this is kind of talk, you know, the more they drink, you see, I would just leave the room, because I know that eventually you see them with that bottle in their hand, they're going to say something that's going to offend you. So if you don't want to hear it, get out the way. That's the way it was back there in the 60s. And so I was standing on a post by the beach. president had just came from a yacht ride. And Bobby Kennedy came out to greet him. Bobby Kennedy, who was the Attorney General. President Kennedy called me over and says, Mr. Bolden, have you met my brother Bobby? I said, no, sir, Mr. President. We shook hands, we stood there, and we talked for about 5 minutes. And not only that, after the president went to his house, oh, beautiful mansion. It's more than a house, it's a mansion. He called me over and he introduced me to his father, who had had a stroke. His father probably wouldn't even remember what happened. His mother, Rose, the children, Jacqueline, and even his cook, who was a native of Honduras. Mansuela, I think that was her name. He introduced me to all. Now, Special Agent in charge, Harvey Henderson, who was from Mississippi, he's noticing all of this, and he's standing back with his arms folded so tight that I doubt if he could breathe. And he was watching all of this. The man was struggling to breathe. He was standing there white as a sheet. So when the shift ended and we went back to the hotel room where we were living, which was a confidential safe house for Secret Service agents, Harvey Henderson looked at me. It was about 5:30 in the afternoon. And it was on July the 3rd of 1961. He called my name. He said, Bolden. I said, what, Harvey? Now, I knew he was a racist because I had listened to him talk. And one of the agents who was from Chicago happened to be on the detail with me, Edward Tucker, said, don't listen to anything that this guy says. This guy's a stone racist. Just don't pay him any attention. So Harvey called me. He says, Bolden. He says, what, Harvey? He says, I want to tell you something, and don't you ever forget it. He says, you're a nigger. You were born a nigger. You're going to die a nigger. You'll never be anything else but a nigger. So act like one. That was his response to how Kennedy was treating me. You see, that was his response, to put him back in his place. Let him know what he is. So on July the 5th, we were on the way back to Washington, D.C. I sat on Marine One, a helicopter with President Kennedy, right across from me. And the chief of the Secret Service, James Rowley, was sitting right next to me. I wanted to tell the president at that time, but there's a certain thing. See, President Kennedy was a military man. And there's a chain of command that you just don't all of a sudden violate. You got to go through a chain of command. Say, for instance, if I say, Mr. President, your life is in danger. Here's the chief of the Secret Service. President Kennedy may not have liked that. He might have said, well, you discussed that with James Rowley. That's your supervisor. Or you should write a memo. See, military men are very particular and meticulous about such things as that. If you want to contact the top man, there's a chain of command that you got to follow. And if you don't follow that, then the person that you're talking to is subject to remind you, did you talk this over with your sergeant? Did you talk this over with your lieutenant? Did you talk this over with the captain? And I had been a state policeman, so I knew that there's a chain of command. So I'm probably answering most of your questions.
yeah. I was thinking that too.
And now, so when the plane landed, James Rowley was the chief of the Secret Service White House detail. Ulysses E. Bauman was the chief of the whole Secret Service. Now, James Rowley had seen, he had witnessed himself, the Secret Service in a little outhouse that we had, a little building on the Kennedy compound. Balls were all around, they were all drinking whiskey and things like that, called themselves celebrating the 4th of July. So I knew it wasn't any need of talking with Ralph. So I went one step above his head and talked to Mr. Bowman, who was chief of the whole Secret Service, and I told him the president's life is in danger. Raleigh says, well, why do you say that? And I commenced to tell him that many on the detail were racist. They were bringing prostitutes into the hotel room, and they were unfit to have the job of guarding the president of the United States. U.E. Bowman promised me that he would look into it, but apparently he never did. I asked Mr. Bowman to remove me from the detail. And the reason that I did that is I knew how prejudiced that my supervisor was. And there was no win for me in confronting a person that prejudiced when he had the authority over you, you see. So now when I went and discussed this with U.E. Bowman, I didn't know that Mr. Bowman was getting ready to retire. Mr. Bowman retired in August of 1961, and guess who took his place? James Rowley, the one who I had been complaining about. He became chief of the Secret Service, so I started looking around for something else to do. Really, I did. I started filing applications.
Okay.
Now,
You talked about your plight as being a very difficult time in your life. In your prayers, did you ever ask God why?
Yes. Yes. And you know what he answered?
What?
With all of the difficulties I had, with them waking me up in Springfield, Missouri, 3 o'clock in the morning, while I was in the prison camp under number 9255 PC. They woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and marched me over to 21 East, which is the psychiatric ward, with the intent of declaring me insane. You see, that was the whole intent of declaring me insane. And it's in the book what happened.
When you went there, you were saying that you heard voices 2 different times.
Yeah.
And one of them told you everything was going to be okay.
Yes, that's right, absolutely.
And the other one gave you a message also.
That's right.
How did you feel with a voice talking to you?
Well,
and did you believe that that was a message from God?
I knew that it was. I knew that it was because I had faith and I knew that my heart was clean. And I knew that God was protecting me. Now you just asked the question, you said, how did I feel? And why did I think that God put me in this particular situation? As a student of the Bible and in reading the Holy Quran and in reading all types of spiritual literature, I found one thing that stuck in my mind, and that was this: no cross, no crown. See, if you're going to do God's work, He's going to try you. He's going to see what you made out of deep down inside. He tried Moses. He tried Jesus. He tried Jeremiah. He tried all of the people who sincerely had a pure heart that wanted to carry His word and to display the power of God. He tried them all. as it says in Isaiah, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee out of the furnace of affliction. That's what it was all about. I go back to the visions that I was having as a young child. He had already prophesied to me and told me what I would have to do in order to carry out his will. When I had a vision as a young man of 11 years old and I was in this steel coffin looking through a square window at 4 people outside, a woman and 3 little children. And I was just 11 years old, and all my life, all through the book, I was looking for that. And when I went to Springfield and they marched me and they put me in this room, took all of my clothes off, took my belt off, and I'm standing in there buck naked. Why? To be born again.
You also talked about divine intervention,
Yes.
where this attorney was supposed to be going to court to declare you insanity.
Yes.
And you said the day before he was supposed to go to court,
Right.
he committed suicide himself,
Yes,
so he
that's
never
right.
got to court.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
See, the chief of classification and parole in any institution that you go in, and the policeman here could bear me out. The chief of the classification and parole, whenever the classification of an inmate is changed, they cannot do it without his okay. They cannot transfer an inmate, they cannot change his status without the chief of the classification of parole in that institution must sign off on it. Now, the chief of the classification parole's name was Julius Nichols. He was a black man, but he looked like he was European. He had to sign off on any change of status that they had in store for me. And that's where it came through him to try to declare me insane. Why? Because he was another black man. They were hiding what they were doing behind him. So he was known as the instigator of my sorrows. Now, I'm supposed to go on August the 7th, August the 7th, before this classification and parole hearing, where they would change my registration number in prison from A, which I was, to P, which means psychiatric. Now, once they declare you psychiatric, you're no longer doing time. You're there for treatment. I could be there now for the same treatment. But there came a vision. I was laying on my bunk and there came a vision. I was in what they call C unit. And the light on my right-hand side, you know, the right-hand side is supposed to be the side of God. And the light came, it was like somebody flicked a cigarette lighter and that light grew from that little flick till it was so bright that I had to close my eyes. The next morning they supposed to take me in. But there came an image of a person swinging back and forth, back and forth. I was afraid because I didn't know. I thought that might be me. I didn't know the answer at the time. So when they came and got me out of the cell that I was in, they had already tried to dope me up. When they came and got me, and they took me to this large room, this big mahogany desk there. It looked like everybody in the institution was in there, all the nurses and doctors and things. Mr. Gronska, who was the deputy warden, he says, we're sending you back to the camp today. And I looked at him because they had gone to all of this trouble. And so he says, go get your things and go back to the camp. So I went. God took me and I put them in a pillowcase, and then I got back to the camp. And I was telling some of the guys just post tale about the vision that I had. And the fact that Julius Nichols didn't show up. God said, man, Julius Nichols is dead. So he hung himself last night. He shot his wife in the leg, chased her down the street, ran back home, went down in the basement, threw an ironing cord over the pipe down in the basement, and jumped off a chair. He dead. Yeah. See, now you know. When I heard that, you know what I thought about.
Could I ask a question? Sure. Please, ma'am. Mr. Bolden, after the hung jury, did you think that you had proper legal representation to keep you from being in double jeopardy with another trial?
I think that George Howard, who was my attorney, did everything possible that he could do without putting his own self in jeopardy.
Uh-huh.
See, George was a young lawyer. We went to school together. We belonged to the same fraternity. I made him in the fraternity. We had known each other for several years.
Okay.
And he was just up against it. They wanted to convict me and wasn't anything going to stand in the way. And the reason that I know that is because when this issue came before the Court of Appeals, and they called the state's attorney, the U.S. Attorney Ed Hanrahan, and the assistant state's attorney up before the Seventh Circuit State Court of Appeals and asked the U.S. Attorney point blank, did you manufacture a case against Abraham Bolden, the defendant? He asked him that 3 times. Mm-hmm. The attorney said, Your Honor, to the Chief Judge now of the United States Court of Appeals, 7th Circuit, Your Honor, I refuse to answer on the grounds that my answer may tend to incriminate me. Mm-hmm. He took the Fifth Amendment, mm-hmm. and yet they affirmed the conviction and sent me to jail. Yes. So you can see no attorney who was breathing at that time could have done anything, but it was not for them to do it. So you can see how this went down. See, and all of this is so that I would have the opportunity to fulfill my promise to God. And she'll tell you that's what I do all day now. I study. I've written 15 books concerning what I have found out and the messages that were given to me while I was in the institution as to why our people are in this suffering. And they're all on Skype. They're all on slideshare.net. They're all free read. See, a sincere man don't take anything to tell you the truth about God. You see what I'm saying? I could probably, let's see, I've had about 10,000 visits on SlideShare. That means that I could have possibly have made $150,000 if I had put the books out. But I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the truth to deliver my people. See? And if a person reads the book, especially the ones that I have concerning the 7 days, of creation from man to God. How does man become God? See, we're here to become representatives of God. See, we're here in this chaos to bring peace into this chaos. Peace through what? Peace through knowledge, will, intention, purity, and love above all. That's what we're here for. To be God's representative on earth. And you don't hear this too much in the churches that are preaching. But that is the why that man is here.
Now, when you were convicted in 1964, you held a press conference at your home and said the government had framed you.
In fact,
What kind of press coverage did you
that
have?
was long before I was convicted. See, when they brought me back from Washington, D.C. and lied to me and told me that they were bringing me back because they had just busted a counterfeiting plant out in the north suburbs and held me incognito, wouldn't let me call my wife or kids, eat anything, drink any water. It was 92 degrees that day. They kept me in a closed room, which we call in police work sweating a person. We call that sweating. When I saw that tactic being used on me, I knew that I was in deep trouble. I knew that something was amiss. See, when they trick me here and tell me that they have something out in one of the suburbs that's all white, and they want me to go undercover in an all-white suburb, there's no way that they're doing anything but lying to me.
When you held your press conference, what kind of press did you get?
Oh, I got big press. I got the evening news on CBS. That was, no, it wasn't Walter Cronkite. Yeah, it might have been Cronkite. But anyway, I got a lot of press conferences. It was on the national news. It was on NCR. I had to do that. I really didn't want to do it, but that's the only way that I could save my life.
Did you ever
Because had I
fear?
not alert the public as to the real reason behind this, I would have become one of the 32 people in the Kennedy assassination that came up dead. See, because nobody would have known what this thing was all about. When it was revealed, they only had one option, and that option was to take away my mind and to discredit me by trying to muddy me up, because they couldn't kill me outright.
Did you ever fear living in your own house after
No.
you started talking
No.
about what had gone on?
No,
You were going up against a very powerful agency.
I know it. I know it. See, I had power on my side.
Had God.
Yes, that's right. See, God was my light and my salvation.
How do you feel now when you wake up in the morning?
I feel
What is on your mind when you wake up in the morning
the
every day?
salvation of my people, delivering my people from this hell that we're in, these drive-bys. I got the solution to the drive-bys. All they got to do is read what I have written. There won't be any more drive-bys if I can get these preachers on my side, these politicians on my side. Drive-bys, that's an easy problem. Whenever that you have a person in power who's asking you why these things are happening, he shouldn't be your leader.
Now, you were denied pardons by 3 presidents.
By 3, and
That
the
was
last
Richard
one,
Nixon, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama.
It didn't surprise me about Richard Nixon. Didn't surprise me at all about Richard Nixon. And then it didn't surprise me at all about Bill Clinton. But I was devastated that President Obama, not only did he not grant the pardon, we had 1,000 petitioners on a petition to President Obama. We never received even a response from him.
Did you receive a response from the other two?
Yes. Even though they were denied.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton wrote me a
Did
nice
they give you a reason
letter.
why it was denied?
Right. Clinton, well, Nixon said that I had not been out of prison long enough. That was Nixon's reason. Clinton's reason, well, you know, he was all messed up in this case here. He claims he never received it from the pardon board. That's what he
Will
claims.
you request one from President Donald Trump?
No, I am not going to ask for. Now, you know, a good friend of his, Roger Stone. Roger Stone is his right-hand man. Roger Stone, I had a talk with Roger Stone, and he says that he will see that my pardon is activated on. But you know, if I don't have it now, I'll never get it. What I want to do now is build something or to contribute to the freedom of my people. All of my energy, 99% of my energy, all day, is giving grace to God and studying to free my people. And it's going to happen. It may not happen on the political realm, but it's going to happen.
Or your 3 children playing a role in trying to help you get your name cleared?
They did, yes. I have a daughter worked for Commonwealth Edison. She retired after 35 years. And now she's worked for McCormick, the McCormick Foundation. I have a son that's PhD. He's a professor at Florida A&M University. I have another son who is works for the Chicago School Board in the computer realm, taking care of the computer for the Chicago School Board, although he just changed jobs. I don't know what, but it's in computer science. And so my children turned out fine. Praise be to my wife, Barbara. Yeah.
Yeah, you and your wife Barbara were married for 49 years.
49 years.
What toll did this take on her
Oh, it was
when that happened to you?
It killed my mother, and it weakened Barbara. It killed my mother. My mother died about 5 years after I was released from prison. She just couldn't stand it. I mean, it killed her, and it made my wife deathly sick from 1985, you might say. After she retired from Nabisco and until the day that she died, it was very troublesome. I could see the decay in her when she would visit me. But even though she was suffering, when I would almost break down, and you almost break down under those conditions sometimes, she would look me sternly in the eye. She said, "You gotta be strong. You gotta be strong." Almost like hypnotic. And I said, "I'm strong." Yeah. I'm telling
The tribute
you.
that you gave to your wife.
Oh,
Don't hear that
listen.
too much anymore.
Do you feel that your integrity and your patriotism to your country and tried to do the right thing by your country didn't pay off?
Well, the end is not here yet. See, as long as I'm breathing, I'm still working on the problem. So I can't say that it didn't pay off. You see, all that I can do is live a life, a godly life, a righteous life of love, harmony, peace, and justice. And then we'll see how it comes out. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right.
You said once through the media that you were concerned about President Barack Obama,
Yes, I was.
his safety.
I was. And rightfully so. You see what happened in Catalonia over there, or wherever they were over there. Secret Service were doing a lot of drinking, and they were caught in rooms with prostitutes. They were up to the same old game. And I was very fearful of Barack Obama's life. But like I said, I was very disheartened that he didn't, although I understand that the president doesn't run everything himself. I understand that. And that there are people who, and I think in my case, the CIA and some of the high officials and NSA say it's better if we leave this guy kind of muddied up because he knows other things too. If he knows this thing, he knows other things too.
Well, you said that President Obama never responded to your pardon.
No.
And I've heard so many people say some of the people that he gave a pardon to were some nefarious characters.
Yeah, I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand that. He gave this person who sold high secrets to the Russians and to other people. He gave them a pardon, and the man was in Fort Leavenworth. But they put me in Fort Leavenworth too for a while, and was doing 35 years.
Is that the one that had the sex change?
Yes. And he not only, he cut his time. The man will be getting out sometime next year. I just couldn't understand that. How did he overlook me? But it's in God's hands. It ain't time yet. It ain't time yet. See, I'm still green on a tree. Maybe, you know, I'm still like a banana on a tree or a green orange. He'll drop me when it's time. When I get sweet enough, he'll drop me.
Well,
What was the reply from Obama administration?
he didn't get a response.
Didn't get a response. Out of all of the people who sent letters in to President Obama on my behalf, and many of them sent copies of the letter, and they were surprised that they didn't get a response either. And there was only one response in which President Obama talked in general terms about the pardon process, and he was trying to do what he could to help the people. Very general letter, but nothing specific about my case, nothing specific.
You talked about, you heard some members of his presidential detail that said they would not take a bullet for him.
Yes. Yes,
But yet and
that's
still, that was one of the things you do when you are protecting the president.
that's your job. That's your main job. Everybody talks about Clint Hill, you know, the guy that jumped on the back of the automobile. When First Lady was crawling on the trunk of the car during the assassination, Clint Hill's job was not to protect the president. His job was to protect the First Lady. And he did his job. It was the Secret Service job in that follow-up call to protect the president. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Clint Hill didn't try to save the president. No Secret Service agent tried to save the president, not one.
The thing that I don't understand is the two people who said they concocted the lies against you, but they would not let you appeal.
Would not even bring him into court. We filed a motion after motion all we wanted to do is put him on the stand and tell the story. We wanted to know how it was set up because it was smooth. It was smooth. Now, I've been involved in cases where, and I'm sure many policemen have, say for instance that we go into an apartment illegally and we arrest an individual in an apartment. Well, they look around and say, now here's a hole in the case. Now we gotta have somebody that said we're the policeman and to open the door. You can't just set it. We knocked the door down and went in and grabbed this guy. Because then we run into illegal search, seizure, and all kind of constitutionalism. And so you agent so-and-so, you're the agent that knocked on the door and you announced that the Secret Service was outside, and you also, you know, tell him what to say when you get on the stand. See, a lot of people don't know the government. They know how to fix up something on you now. I was absolutely shocked. I thought we had that case in October 1965. I thought we had won that appeal. And the attorneys who were in the in the room where they were arguing the case, they were shaking my hand and my attorney's hand and say, "Oh, your client's a free man." So I've never heard of anybody taking the Fifth Amendment on such a question as this. So your man can go on
And your
vacation.
attorneys did not pursue
Sure, we went all the way
it
to
any
the
further
Supreme Court.
when these people said they
We
had
went
lied?
all the way to the Supreme Court. We filed motion after motion trying to, we just, see, not only did Spagnoli admit this under oath, he called my attorney, George Howard, and said he wanted to testify and name names about all of these people who were involved. And he did intimate that Mr. Martineau, who was the chief of the Secret Service officer, said, "We're going to get that smart nigger." He did tell my attorney that.
More than anything else, what did you learn from this?
You know, if I had to pick two things out of this that I've learned, number one would be have trust in God. Number two would be find you a good wife. Find you a good wife. Treat her right and stay with her. Because in the long term, that's what's going to put you through. See, the Bible's right when it says a good wife is more valuable than pure gold. I'm a witness to that.
What were your feelings when the judge told the jurors that you were guilty even before they had found you guilty?
I was shocked, and it floored me because, see, I had been a student of the law for so many years, coming out of Pinkerton and then the state police, and you know, I had gone to school and I'd heard about the Constitution and the right to a fair trial, and the judge is supposed to be impartial, and then something like this happened. I was absolutely shocked that he got away with it. But Anna B. Hightower, Miss Anna B. Hightower, who was the holdout, saw through the whole thing, and she left directly from the court and went to Channel 7 and had a conversation with Channel 7 and said, anybody that's not prejudiced can see what they're doing to that boy. That boy didn't do anything. They ain't talking about nothing down there. They framed that boy. You could see it. They up there on the stand laughing.
So they nailed you in your second trial where you had an all-white jury?
Yes, right. They made sure this time that we would have no black people on the jury. Now, I just had a handwriting analysis done on the verdict sheet. There's a good possibility that the judge signed one of the jurors' name on the verdict sheet that found me guilty. But now, I had sent it to a handwriting analysis in Dallas, Texas. She says there's a good possibility. But to bring that up at this time, I don't think it would do too much good.
They're supposed to release some more papers from John F. Kennedy
Right.
When he served as president, that they had put a lid on and said it couldn't be released until
Yes,
2017.
That's right.
Are you looking forward to seeing that? Or
I'm looking
would you be in a
looking
position
forward
to
to
see
it
it?
because, see, everything that they said that I was lying about has been proven through sources other than me, through records and everything. They said that I lied about the fact that Kennedy was supposed to be assassinated in Chicago. Now, another investigator investigated this case. He came up with the same facts. And not only did he come up with the same facts, he came up with the name of the people who were involved. You see, in all this time, for 40 years, they've been saying I was lying. It was no investigation of assassination
So
in
you
Chicago.
felt that, I saw where you felt that it was a conspiracy.
Oh, absolutely.
So it was more than the guy.
Yeah, so the only thing that I hate about it is that my family had to suffer. My children, you know, they would go to school and where's your father? And then it leaked out, you know, that I was in prison, and I just could imagine how they felt. And because I had a job waiting for me when I came out of prison and everything. I was not out of work one day.
Yeah, you were 32 years
Yeah.
at a place.
35 years in quality control. I became one of the most quality, conscious quality control consultants.
Well, it seemed
In
like you never
Illinois.
had a problem getting a job.
No,
It
never.
was, you know, even those
No.
jobs you didn't think that you could get in the beginning,
No.
Pinkerton and
Yeah,
Illinois State Police. So you've always had the privilege of having a job when you applied for it.
right.
Why
You know.
you could get it?
Yeah, she knew. Yeah, she knew. She knew. And that's the thing about it. You know, we were sitting there after I was convicted. I was sitting there, we were reading the Bible. We had Bible study in the living room, and the wife and I, we were sitting there reading, and the doorbell rang. I have that in the book, too. And I had just discussed with my wife, I said, you know, honey, I said, if I go away, you'll be in line to get aid, and we won't have this problem. But as long as I'm here, they're not going to give you anything. That's the way the system is set up. She couldn't get food stamps or anything as long as I'm here, but if I'm go away, then she qualified. My wife said, I'm not going on no aid. She says, you got to have faith. And the minute she said that, the doorbell rang. Now, I had to come up with $1,000 by Monday or surrender myself in jail. We had $50 between us to carry us for the rest of the month. The doorbell rang. And the postman standing there with this big package. And I go to the door, he said, Mr. Bolden? I said, yes. Sign here. I signed, took the package, laid it up on the couch. My wife said, what's that? I said, I don't know. And I went, commenced to open the box. First thing I came to was a typewriter, old limp typewriter. I still got that typewriter. And up under the typewriter was a ream of typing paper. And I looked at it, and it says Bill Wagnett, Turner Falls, Massachusetts. My wife said, you know him? I said, no, I don't know Bill Wagnett. So I said, I guess he want me to write my story or something like that. So I set the typewriter over here, and I set the paper on top of the typewriter, and I started doubling things up, you know, to take the wrappings to the trash. And I raised it up in there, and the wife said, something floated up under the couch. I said, where? She said, look, right there. Reach down and get it. She said, something floated. When you doubling it up, it floated up. And reach down there, and I pull an envelope out from under the couch, open it up, check for $2,500 from Bill Wagnett, Turner Falls, Massachusetts. And I needed $1,000 Monday. So we had enough. It tided us over. My wife went to work for Nabisco, and I went to work at 119th and Morgan Street before that money ran out.
That was divine intervention
That
again.
was divine intervention.
Now,
Yeah.
those two guys that lied on you, did they ever spend time in prison?
No? Oh, Spagnola did.
Yeah.
I
Oh, he
saw
did?
Spagnola at Terre Haute, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw Spagnola at Terre Haute, Indiana. He come trying to talk to me. I say, I have nothing to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ain't you mad or something? No. You did what any crook would do. If he wanted to stay out of jail, now, how am I going to be mad at him? He was trying to stay out of jail. You know, he lied, but what hurt me is some of the agents lied.
Well, you had very fond memories of President John F. Kennedy, and you said, I'll miss him for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I will. because he was a sincere man. He, when you talk to President Kennedy, he looked you in the eye, and you can tell that he was for real. He wasn't just mouthing. See, Kennedy suffered more than a lot of people think. While I was on the White House detail, I would say 50% of the time he was on crutches. But he didn't let the press and the people see him like that. He was on crutches because of his back. And at times he would be around the White House and you could see his hand, like, you know, he had that Parkinson. And then when he went on the press, I remember we went to the press club and he had what the president had his press conference, and he had to put his hand in his pocket like this because when he, yes, yes,
The whole family has it.
yes, like that you could see his hands moving like that. See,
Yeah.
and they keep him from shaking, so they had some of his suits had like a clamp in it that clamped over his belt, so that when he put his hand in his coat pocket like that, then it wouldn't move. It wouldn't come out like that, or it would have been going like that. So,
Now, there's a Kennedy, Christopher Kennedy,
yes.
that has announced that he will run for governor of Illinois. Do you know him? And what are your feelings about him?
Well, don't know a whole lot about Chris Kennedy. I'm not sure that I wrote Chris Kennedy or not. I know I wrote the one out in California. There's one in California I asked for his help. I had people write Carolyn Kennedy, who asked for her help, and then there's a Kennedy in New York. We never received a response from any of them. I wrote Ted Kennedy myself, and never received a response. Of course, I always felt that the Kennedys were afraid because, see, their dad was a gangster, and they were just afraid that they would be assassinated too.
Okay, let's talk about your book.
All right.
The Echo from Daily Plaza.
Yeah, that's right. It's Dealey Plaza.
How did you come about getting your title?
Well, my wife had a lot to do with that. She had a lot to do with it. I was sitting at the table one Sunday, the Bears had a football game going. I wanted to see the football game. And the wife had been kind of suffering. And she says, Abraham, it's time to write your book. I said, well, Barbara, I don't know. I said, that's going to take a lot of time then when you write a book. You got to make 5 copies of the manuscript and all this kind of stuff. And it's going to take me forever. She said, get a computer. I said, I don't know nothing about a computer. I don't know what kind of computer it is. She said, well, you got a son that's in computers. She said, I'll call him up. I said, now? I said, a game coming on in about a half an hour. She says, no. So she go to the telephone and she called my son, Abram Jr., and said, Dad need a computer. Well, I heard Abram on the other end. He said, what? The dad need a problem. He said, when? And she said, now. Can you come over? So he came over there mad at me. I said, look, don't get mad at me. I didn't call you. So we went out to Best Buy and we got a computer. And he brought it up. Now he got to set the thing up for me. So he set it up and the wife said, now you don't have any excuse. I said, well, the only thing, I get this. I said, the only thing, I can't remember a lot of those things that happened. You know, I wrote you in letters and things and told you what's happened. She says, I got news for you. You can't use that for an excuse either. Because I got every letter you wrote me is upstairs in the attic. I said, all of them? Every one of them.
Did you write the book by yourself or did you have a ghostwriter?
No, I wrote it. I wrote it. I sat down and I wrote that book, and when I finished the manuscript, the wife and I, this was in 2008, 2005 is when I really finished the manuscript and had my sons and everybody check it out and read. And the wife and I went to Soul Vegetarian. We had dinner, and this was in December, her birthday. She died on December the 27th, that same month. She got to see the finished manuscript. She got to see
What
it.
year was that?
2005.
But how did you come up with your name? After
Well,
you came?
Echo, John Kennedy got killed, and it reverberated and killed me also. You see, it was like an echo. What happened to him happened to me.
Yeah.
It was an echo. It's like throwing a pebble in the water. It just spread. We still in that same echo now from Dealey Plaza. Trump is an echo from Dealey Plaza.
Yeah, Dealey Plaza, is that where the car was going through at the
That's
time
right.
that Oswald?
That's
supposedly
right.
shot out of him?
Oswald didn't shoot that man.
Oswald's story.
He didn't shoot that.
It was an interesting evening with you.
Yeah, same
Videographer has to go.
Yeah.
And we really enjoyed the conversation with you. There's a lot to be learned. And I'm asking everyone to go out and buy his book. It's worth buying and it's worth reading. So we thank you, Mr. Bolden,
Thanks for inviting
coming out.
me. It's been a
you
joy
know.
for me to talk with you and to meet these gracious people. And you're going to hear more from me.